Welcome back. I'm Kim Bailey. She's Fulyana Osborne, and this is Inside Exec. We're concluding our discussion with Chad Bareither today, and we're looking at continuous improvement in terms of the process, who's responsible, where does the buck stop and start, and the confusion around just-in-time manufacturing.
Well, when you talk about DMAIC and you get to the part of control, so now we're making sure we got the process, we got it right, and now control so no one tampers with it and undo it. But you also mentioned earlier about continuous improvement, and that is so important. So we can't just leave it there and 10 years down the track we'll look at it. Talk more about the continuous improvement.
Oh, okay. So one of the kind of the mental paradigm shift that needs to happen in organizations is that if we just start off with thinking about a frontline workforce, so an assembly worker, a service technician, maybe a customer service rep in a call center, frontline direct contact with the customer, direct contact with the customer, and typically hourly wage workforce, we see their job as executing the process. Run the process that we design. And the paradigm, the thinking change that we need to have in that situation is their job is to do the work and improve the work.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that is, so we can have these iterations if the ideas are coming from the same place that is improving it. And that sounds easy to do, but the challenge is we need to give folks time to make that improvement. So again, I'd go to a story from my past of working on a particular assembly line this is in a medical device industry. We are working with one business unit and deploying daily management of the process. And one of those components, we're working from that up of identifying issues that are preventing us from hitting the target. We're like, great. Now we understand daily performance. We understand when we're on and off target. Now we need to start problem solving. When are you going to give the team time to problem solve? On their lunch break. Time out. No one is going to voluntarily give up their break to do work. And in the U.S., it's probably against the law as well. But what we challenged the workforce was the management with was, let's just run an experiment. Let's do it for 3 months. We'll give them the team collectively 1 hour on Friday on the clock, paid to prioritize a problem and start the problem solving process.
Yeah.
So you think about that. 1 hour a week, you take out vacations, that's 48 hours a year, right? 48 hours of a 2,000 hour work year that we have. Like, that's not a big improvement that you need to make. So one problem solved, we were able to pay for the time of the whole year just by eliminating a quality defect that didn't require the rework. Why do I tell that story? Because what we need to get people and leadership, even frontline leadership, to understand is you need to give people time to solve their own problems. And so how does this tie back into the continuous improvement? The standards need to be updated and improved by the people who are actually doing the work. In most organizations, it is that a manufacturing engineer writes the standard operating procedure and hands it to operations, and then they go execute it. Most of those organizations, if you go check on the line, that's probably not how they're actually doing it.
That's perfect. I have many examples that I experienced in the corporate world of what you just said. And it does work. That hour and understanding from the middle manager to senior managers, the importance and the payback they get from that is really important, because once you get them and you show them the results, they then on board and they want more.
That was my feeling too. My reaction too is that once you give them that opportunity and they get a win, that they're going to be committed to it, and they're going to be committed to the process because they've seen that it works.
Yeah.
If I can expand from that a little bit and go, so now we're talking about hourly, and then if you go up to, some of the organizations I've worked with, I mentioned like R&D, so you're working with scientists or engineers, they're salaried workforce. So just give them more work to do, right? But that's another change that we need to have of like, you need to give them space. Like, what can I deprioritize so I can focus on improving this process over here? And whether it's a lean Kaizen event, or it's a Six Sigma project, or it's a rapid improvement event, whatever you want to call it, if it's extra work, most of the organizations I've been in, when they do that, as soon as they're done, they're like, I do not want to do that again.
Yeah.
But if you're actually giving them space within a 40-hour work week, to make improvements to the way that they do their job. It sounds counterintuitive to like traditional or classical management, as Bob Emiliani would call it, but it pays back those dividends. If I just stop doing one thing while I improve this process, the benefits, whether in terms of quality or time or cost, are going to pay for that small delay in starting that other project.
Oh, that's great. Sorry, I bombarded you with a whole lot, and I'm very, very happy we covered everything I wanted to cover. What about you?
What else should we cover? You know, for any organization, the hardest change is really for senior leadership to commit to it. And I don't just mean like sponsor it and say we want to do it or establish the goal on the front end, because it ends up being, for sustainable continuous improvement, a change in the way that we run the business. So you mentioned before about DMAIC and the control phase, because we don't want to come back and rework on that process 2 years down the road. A concept that comes out of lean management and works very nicely with DMAIC is leader standard work, to say that we don't just have standard work down where we're assembling the widget or taking the phone call or performing the field service or whatever the frontline work is, that there's an obligation as we move up the hierarchy of leadership to also ensure that our processes are working. So frontline leadership needs to be there to coach and develop, right? This isn't like the whip and the stick, right? This is to coach and develop the frontline employees, that they understand the procedures, they understand why they're important, they understand the tricks and the tools appropriate for doing the work. Then as we go up the next layer, that the manager of those frontline supervisor ensures that they understand why we measure things a certain way and why processes are developed the way and what it means to the customer. And then as we go up to, say, a director level, that the director level can communicate down to the manager and hold them accountable for verifying their processes on a regular basis. And that cascade goes all the way up to senior leadership, where this concept of process confirmation, of being process-based in my thinking, not just results.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is, most organizations are managed by results or managed by metrics. And that's not bad, but if that's the only way we run our business, we're always managing the business looking in the rearview mirror. But you drive on the right side of the road when you drive down there, right? Yeah. So so if I'm driving, if I'm looking at metrics, it's already happened, right? So if I'm measuring things like quality rate on a line, well, all that data has already happened. Where do I get advantages as a leader is by reinforcing the process to prevent those. But it's not just holding the front line accountable and, as we talked earlier, like retraining them when they mess up. It's like, well, where is the supervisor in performing routine spot checks and redirecting the people if they're fixturing a piece wrong before we create a quality defect? Where's the accountability of the manager to make sure that our supervisors understand the processes so they can coach their people? Where's the accountability of the directors to make sure that the managers understand the business goals and what we're trying to accomplish? And then up to the vice president level so they can communicate to the directors what our strategic goals are for the year and the quarter so that we can make sure we're establishing the right processes. And that doesn't come from just metrics. That is a routine, a predefined and a planned cadence of touching base on making sure, are you running your processes? Not did you get the results? It's like, are you running your processes? So we go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation about the system, is like, you can't just manage by the results. The system, part of it is that control phase, is the leader standard work, the process confirmation. And that is a fundamental change in the way that most leaders got to where they are today.
Yeah.
So you see the mental, the psychological challenge there of like getting a leader who has been very successful in their career to get to a higher level position to now make a decision if I want to change the whole game, right? Change the rules of the game, even though that's exactly what got me here. Yeah. And so you have a lot of organizations, as we go back to talking about the question, is it still relevant, that are saying lean doesn't work, or Six Sigma isn't relevant anymore, but it's because they've instituted it as a program, like a bolt-on extra thing to do. They have not invested in like a fundamental change in the system they use to manage their business.
Yeah. And that's no different to the quality management systems. They were all introduced as add-ons. And you had a special unit that introduced it, and then they got dissolved, and you thought, well, we don't have to worry about that anymore. It didn't become part of the operational procedures. It was just something that was done at the time. I'm interested in that sense. is that the last few years have challenged businesses in all sorts of ways. Have you seen an increase in people looking for that process type of evaluation of their businesses?
Unfortunately, no. Here's what I will say. If we look at, you say the last couple of years. So if I understand you correctly, and we're talking about COVID and supply chain disruptions and things of that nature, you saw a lot of articles, even like mass media, right, that were saying, does lean really work? Is just-in-time really sustainable? But the challenge is they didn't institute just-in-time, not the way it was originally designed to. They may have reduced inventory, but they offshored supply, and there was unknown supply chain risk adopted to lower those inventory levels in a lot of cases, right? I'm making kind of blanket statements to illustrate the point. I'm trying to remember. There's a conference I was at last year, and I'm struggling for the presenter that was at it. I think it was Richard Sheridan out of a company called Menlo Innovations, which is a software development company in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and was talking about how as we get into this downturn, as we're coming out of COVID and the supply chains were stabilizing, or they were still a little bit amok, was that there was two kinds of organizations. There are organizations who are going to invest in process and they're going to come out stronger the other side. And there's organizations who are not and might not survive. Again, I'm making a dramatic statement of effect, but I think to answer your question, I'm not seeing an increase in organizations that are looking to invest in process to stabilize and grow for the future. I've seen more organizations that have said that lean stuff didn't work, jack up inventory so that we don't run out of stuff again.
It's a shame, really, because to my mind, that is the way of the future. That's where we need to be looking. That's the sustainable future. That's the sustainable business model.
If we dig into that a little bit more, and I'm sorry, this is just something that has been a little bit of a peeve of mine, because people have been looking at things like lower inventory and just in time and say it doesn't work. But the challenge was we went to a global market and we offshored stuff to save 3 cents a unit or whatever, right? And that is not the way like the original just in time. It was local suppliers with strong business relationships, which was the lowest risk investment for the customer. So going back to customer, to making sure that we have a stable, reliable, it wasn't lowering inventories and sole sourcing contracts to save money. It was really to have a predictable flow of materials over time. So we had a mutually beneficial relationship with the supplier to better serve our customer. And like that part was missed. It was like, oh, just in time doesn't work. We lowered inventories and we ran out of stuff. It's like, right. Because we had, I don't know the number, right? But you had a handful of companies producing microchips for the whole world. Yeah, you all carried low inventory, but it was the same company.
And then they had the outside influence of a government saying, you can't do it there anymore. You can't manufacture it there anymore. So they really weren't prepared for any of the contingencies. It does come back, though, to what you talked about very early on about defining what you're there for, what the purpose is.
Absolutely.
A couple of minutes to talk about your book.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks. So I've been doing this type of work, as you mentioned in the introduction in my bio, for 15 years. I have recognized that most organizations' challenge is just where to start. A lot of consultants come in or organizations come in kind of under the banner of Lean or Six Sigma. And if you look and search the web, there's kind of a wide variety of what people say Lean is. So a lot of it is what I would call a tool-based approach. I'm saying, we're going to come in and 5S your plan. Right, we're going to come in and we're going to teach you, Kaizen events, or as we just mentioned before, we're going to lower inventory and do just in time with Kanban. But that tool-based approach doesn't build the system that's going to make it sustainable. So pulling on the information I've gleaned and that I've taken from my mentors that had experience in different organizations and industries of Lean or Six Sigma, I've synthesized that together in an approach I've been using with my clients and documented that into a text that the draft manuscript is complete. I'll have it out this month to a couple of technical reviewers to make sure it's sensible. And then starts the process that I have no visibility of, like I've never done it before, of like all of the content and then the copy editing and then the formatting and stuff like that. So, but this book, it has been a wonderful opportunity to really kind of pressure test my approach. And I think I've learned a lot of things myself just by going through the process, which just kind of side note, if there's any of your listening audience that is like thinking about getting into a particular field, I challenge you to write it down. Even if you don't decide to write a book, write an article, start writing it down to make sure that you understand it. You learn so much through the writing process.
Yeah.
I feel like the product and the service I can offer my clients now is 5 times better than it was before I started writing it down.
Mhm.
So you found a process, an improved process for yourself. This is very good.
An improved process, yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for that. You let us know when it's out.
My target is third quarter of 2023. I will keep you updated if I'm making that deadline.
Good.
Very good. And what process you've improved in the meantime to make sure that you do get there.
Yeah.
Chad, it's been really educational talking to you. I have enjoyed it immensely. I will say I was disappointed that you haven't seen an improvement in the process uptake of people, but that's just my personal view, and I'll be shouting that from the rooftops now. People should be doing it that way. It has been a different topic for us to talk about, and we've talked about it in the sort of depth that we need to for our listening audience. So we do appreciate your time and the sharing of your expertise. And we look forward to giving you an opportunity to tell us a dad joke.
Okay,
now,
a dad joke.
Because I will say for our listeners that in the bio, he mentioned it as the last thing. And you know how I read things, first thing, last thing, and anything in between is lucky to get a mention.
Okay, well, I will tell. It's one of my daughters. So I have 3 children. It's one of my daughter's favorite dad jokes. So here we go. A skeleton walks into a bar and he orders a beer and a mop.
He ordered a beer and a
mop.
And a mop.
You know, so for when he drinks the beer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, duh. Sorry. Oh, God, I'm slow. That is a dad's joke. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a dad joke.
That's excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that with us and our listeners. On a serious note, we do thank you, Chad, for joining us today. We'll wrap it up here. I'm Kim Bailey. She's Fulyana Osborne. We've been talking with Chad Bareither, and this is Inside Exec.